Marcus Allen was known for keeping to himself. Some believed it was a quiet nature born of shyness, while others thought it came from years of navigating a world that often misjudged him. When Marcus boarded the flight that morning, he didn't anticipate how one small act of kindness would ripple through his life in unexpected ways. He walked down the first-class aisle, trying to ignore the curious glances from passengers who weren't accustomed to seeing someone like him in these seats. Marcus wasn't there for the luxurious meals or the champagne. He had earned his place, just like anyone else. With a brief, polite smile, he placed his well-worn leather backpack under the seat, took out a novel with bent corners, and flipped to the last page he'd read. Settling into the plush chair, he felt some of the tension leave his body. A flight attendant stopped by, offering drinks. Marcus requested orange juice, his voice steady but quiet. The hum of the engines and the gentle atmosphere began to lull him into a sense of calm. As he gazed out of the window, his thoughts drifted back to the journey that had brought him here. Growing up in a small town, Marcus was often underestimated. Teachers labeled him as trouble, quick to assume the worst. But his mother never let him believe those words. She stood firm, encouraging him to work harder, push further, and rise above the noise. Her unwavering support had carried him through many challenges. Now, as a data analyst for a rapidly growing tech firm, Marcus was on his way to secure a major deal, an opportunity he'd poured countless hours into preparing for. Still, old insecurities sometimes lingered in the back of his mind, whispering doubts. Just as Marcus was about to doze off, the soft sound of murmured voices caught his attention. He turned and saw a woman standing unsteadily in the aisle. One hand grasped the overhead bin for support, while the other rested protectively on her rounded belly. She was clearly pregnant, and exhaustion was etched across her face. Beside her stood a man who looked equally worried. They both scanned the first-class cabin, as though hoping for a solution to an unspoken problem. Marcus quickly pieced the situation together. The flight was full, and no one in first class seemed inclined to give up their seat. The woman's shoulders sagged as she and the man exchanged weary glances before glancing down the aisle, likely toward their economy seats. A pang of sympathy hit Marcus. He imagined how uncomfortable the cramped seats would be on a long flight, especially for someone in her condition. His eyes darted to the empty seat beside him. He had paid extra for this space, but in that moment, it didn't feel like it mattered. She needed it more. Without hesitation, Marcus stood and gently tapped the woman's shoulder. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, offering a kind smile. "Please, take my seat. You'll be much more comfortable here." The woman blinked in surprise, her mouth opening as though to protest. The man beside her looked equally startled. For a moment, they seemed unsure of how to respond. But when she saw the sincerity in Marcus's eyes, a wave of relief washed over her. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Marcus nodded firmly. "Absolutely." He grabbed his backpack, motioned for her to sit, and gave the couple a reassuring smile. The flight attendant, who had been watching the exchange, stepped forward to assist the woman as she settled into the seat. Her husband mouthed a heartfelt thank you to Marcus, who simply nodded in return. As Marcus made his way toward the back of the plane, he noticed the curious stares from other passengers. He didn't let it bother him. Eventually, he found an empty seat sandwiched between two broad-shouldered men who didn't seem thrilled by the arrangement. But Marcus folded himself into the small space, reminding himself it was just a few hours. The engines roared to life, and the plane began its ascent. Marcus cast a final glance out at the bright sky before closing his eyes. He didn't expect anything more from the couple. He hadn't done it for recognition. For him, the act of giving up his seat was enough. But life has a way of surprising us. By the time the plane touched down, Marcus's quiet act of generosity would set in motion a series of events that would alter not just his life, but the lives of others in profound ways. Leon Carter disembarked from the plane, exhaustion weighing on him after the long flight. He was among the last to leave the aircraft, his mind already shifting to the important meeting he had in just a few hours. Stifling a yawn, he joined the line at the airport cafe, hoping a strong coffee would shake off the fatigue. As Leon rummaged through his wallet, a voice called out from just ahead in line. "Hey, the man said, offering a slightly nervous grin. "I just wanted to thank you again for what you did back there. My wife and I really appreciate it." Leon looked up to see the pregnant woman's husband standing in front of him. The man introduced himself as Adam Riley, explaining that his wife, Lily, had been dealing with health complications from her pregnancy. Sitting in the cramped economy section could have made things worse for her. "It's no trouble," Leon replied, brushing off the gratitude. "I'm just glad she was able to be comfortable." But Adam wouldn't let it go. He insisted on buying Leon's coffee, and despite Leon's protests, he eventually relented. They chatted briefly while waiting for their drinks, and Adam explained why they were in town. Lily's father had recently passed away, and they were there to handle some family matters before the baby arrived. Leon offered his condolences, unsure if it was appropriate to ask more questions, but Adam's open and genuine demeanor put him at ease. Before they parted, Adam insisted they exchange numbers. Leon hesitated. It wasn't often that strangers became more than passing acquaintances, but Adam seemed earnest. Reluctantly, Leon saved the number and bid Adam farewell. Leon's destination was the offices of Vantage Solutions, a prestigious firm considering his company for a significant contract. It was a career-defining opportunity, and Leon had spent weeks preparing for it. By the time he arrived downtown, he'd shaken off most of the flight's wariness and was ready to deliver his presentation. The conference room exuded an air of professionalism, with a long glass table and two executives seated at the far end. One was a middle-aged woman with steely gray hair and a commanding presence. The other, a younger man, idly tapped his pen against a notepad. Their expressions were unreadable as Leon began his pitch. Leon launched into his presentation, confident in the depth of his research and the solutions his firm could provide. He explained their approach to data analytics, how it was tailored to meet the needs of organizations like Vantage Solutions, and the innovative techniques they employed. As he spoke, he caught subtle shifts in their body language. A raised eyebrow here, a slight nod there, that hinted at their interest. But midway through, the woman interrupted, her tone sharp. "What makes you think your team can handle a project of this scale? We've spoken to several firms, many with far more experience than yours." Leon took a steadying breath. "We may be a smaller, younger firm," he began, meeting her gaze. "But what we lack in size, we make up for in adaptability and innovation. My team has a track record of delivering personalized, high-quality results, and we approach challenges with fresh perspectives that larger corporations often lack." He smiled, hoping to project confidence. The woman's expression didn't soften, but the younger man chimed in, complimenting the thoroughness of Leon's data. Buoyed by this small victory, Leon dove into the finer details of his projection models, answering their questions with precision and clarity. When he concluded, both executives stood to shake his hand. Though they didn't give a definitive answer, they assured him they'd be in touch. Leon left the building feeling cautiously optimistic. At the very least, he hadn't fumbled. As he stepped onto the bustling city street, Leon turned on his phone and saw 2 missed calls from an unknown number. Moments later, a text came through. "We'd love to treat you to dinner, Adam." Leon paused. It wasn't often he received such invitations, especially from someone he'd just met. Yet there was something about the Rileys that intrigued him. Besides, work trips often left him feeling isolated, and the idea of sharing a meal with friendly company was appealing. He texted back, agreeing to meet them that evening. That night, Leon found himself outside a cozy bistro tucked away from the city's main streets. A soft, golden light spilled from the windows, and soft jazz drifted through the air. Adam waved him over, standing beside Lily, who greeted Leon with a warm smile. Though she moved carefully, there was a calmness about her that hadn't been there on the plane. Inside, they found a table in a quiet corner. The atmosphere was inviting, and Leon quickly felt at ease. Lily spoke first, her voice filled with gratitude. "I don't think I got the chance to properly thank you," she said, her eyes shimmering with sincerity. "That flight was so much longer than I expected, and I was at my wits' end before you offered your seat. It meant the world to me." Leon shook his head, brushing it off. "It really wasn't a big deal." Adam chimed in, smiling. "It was to us. You don't see that kind of kindness every day." Their words struck Leon, though he didn't know how to respond. Instead, he listened as they shared more about their lives, their hopes for their soon-to-arrive baby, and the challenges of losing Lily's father so close to such a joyous occasion. By the end of the evening, Leon felt a surprising sense of connection with the Rileys. What had begun as a chance encounter now felt like the start of something meaningful. As they said their goodbyes outside the bistro, Adam clapped Leon on the back and said, "We're glad to have met you. Let's stay in touch." Leon nodded, feeling the unfamiliar warmth of new friendship. What he didn't realize then was just how entwined their lives were about to become. Leon sat back, processing the gratitude Lily and Adam expressed during dinner. "The flight was much longer than I expected," Lily admitted, her voice tinged with emotion. "With everything going on, I was at my breaking point." Leon shrugged lightly, his modesty evident. "I'm just glad I could help." Adam jumped in. "You saw how no one else even moved. Moments like that remind you how rare genuine kindness can be." The couple exchanged a glance, an unspoken decision passing between them. Leon noticed the shift and raised an eyebrow, curious. "What's on your mind?" Lily fidgeted with the edge of her napkin, then spoke hesitantly. "It might sound strange, but we wanted to talk to you about something." She paused, searching for the right words. "My due date is just a few weeks away, and we're here dealing with my father's estate. It's complicated. We need help." Leon blinked, caught off guard. "Help? From me? You barely know me." Lily nodded, her gaze steady. "That's true, but you gave up your seat on the plane without a second thought. Most people wouldn't have done that. It showed us that you care about doing the right thing. We need someone like that." Adam cleared his throat. "Her dad had a business. We don't know the full scope of it yet, but there are some irregularities. We were hoping to find someone with your expertise, someone who could make sense of the financial mess. We've got an attorney, but they don't specialize in this kind of work." Leon's thoughts raced. He'd come to the city for an official pitch, not a personal project. Yet, something about their earnestness struck a chord. "What kind of business?" he asked cautiously. "And how much data are we talking about?" Lily explained that her father had run an import-export company. Since his passing, she'd uncovered multiple accounts, some potentially off the books, and piles of confusing spreadsheets. "I don't think there's anything illegal," she added, her voice wavering. "But my dad trusted the wrong people sometimes. I need to know if someone's taking advantage of us." Leon considered the request. It would be a significant time commitment, but it wasn't impossible. And the vulnerability in Lily's voice made it clear how much she needed someone in her corner. "All right," he said, surprising even himself. "Send me what you've got. I'll take a look." Relief washed over Lily's face, and she leaned back in her chair, exhaling deeply. Adam beamed, his gratitude evident. The conversation lightened as they discussed everyday topics, potential baby names, Leon's path into data analytics, and Lily's childhood memories of her father. Occasionally, Leon noticed glances from other diners. He was a black man sharing a table with a white couple, and the unspoken tension of that dynamic wasn't lost on him. Yet, within the bubble of their conversation, those stares felt distant and unimportant. After dinner, the crisp night air greeted them as they stepped outside. Lily offered Leon a ride back to his hotel, but he declined, insisting the walk would do him good. They parted with warm goodbyes, none of them fully grasping how deeply their lives were about to intertwine. The next morning, Leon woke to an email from Lily. Attached was a folder containing scanned documents, ledgers, and bank statements. With a fresh cup of coffee in hand, Leon opened his laptop and began analyzing the labyrinth of numbers. Patterns began to emerge, repeated transactions and large sums funneled through sub-accounts. The deeper he dug, the clearer it became that this was more than a simple oversight. By midday, Leon had to pause his side project to attend a follow-up meeting with the prospective client. This time, the atmosphere was warmer. The younger executive smiled as he welcomed Leon into a smaller conference room. "We appreciate your thoroughness," he said. "We'd like to meet the rest of your team and maybe set up a conference call next week." Leon agreed, his spirits lifting. As he left the building, hope buzzed in his chest. Perhaps he was closer to securing the deal than he'd realized. But the moment he stepped onto the busy sidewalk, his phone buzzed again. Another unknown number flashed across the screen. Cautiously, Leon answered. "Leon, it's Adam," came the voice on the other end, edged with urgency. "I hate to bother you, but I really need to talk to you about something." Leon's heart sank when Adam's voice came through the phone. "I'm really sorry to bother you, but Lily's in the hospital. It's probably nothing serious," Adam said, though the worry in his tone was unmistakable. "She felt dizzy, and the doctor wants to keep her overnight as a precaution. She specifically asked me to let you know." A wave of concern swept over Leon. "Do you need anything?" he asked, his voice steady but urgent. Adam hesitated. "We're okay, I think. Just worried. If you can keep going with the documents, that'd be a big help. We'll connect soon." Leon agreed, his mind racing. After hanging up, he flagged down a taxi and returned to his hotel. Anxiety for Lily simmered beneath his focus as he opened his laptop and dove back into the complex maze of her father's finances. Cryptic references to shipping containers and inflated transaction amounts began to jump out at him. Names in the records alternated between seemingly legitimate contacts and suspicious entries. The deeper Leon dug, the more unsettling it became. Was this mismanagement, or something darker? Leon's restless night was filled with spinning thoughts. He pictured Adam pacing the hospital halls and Lily, vulnerable and stressed. Had he stepped too far into their lives? Would his involvement only complicate matters for them? Still, he couldn't shake the sense of responsibility that had rooted itself deep in him. By morning, Adam called with better news. "Lily's been released," he said, relief evident in his voice. "The doctors say she just needs rest and to avoid stress." The update only deepened Leon's resolve. If Lily needed rest, the least he could do was lighten the burden of unraveling her father's chaotic business dealings. He poured himself into the numbers, working late into the night and cross-referencing information with local business records. Patterns began to emerge. Some transactions seemed legitimate, while others suggested someone close to the business had been siphoning funds. Later that week, Leon met Adam and Lily at the same bistro. Lily, pale and visibly drained, sipped tea while Adam fiddled with his coffee cup. Leon carefully laid out his findings. "There are consistent anomalies," he explained, tapping the edge of a spreadsheet. "It's not definitive, but the evidence suggests someone was embezzling funds. The repeated patterns make it unlikely this was just sloppy bookkeeping." Lily's voice trembled. "Why would anyone do this? My dad wasn't perfect, but he was an honest man." Adam's jaw tightened. Could it be someone close to him? A partner? An employee? Leon nodded grimly. "That's a possibility, but without more proof, we can't be certain. I think you should loop in your attorney, and if you're comfortable, I can keep digging." Lily hesitated, then exhaled deeply. "Do it," she said, determination hardening her features. "We need to know the truth." The next day, Leon returned to the offices of Vantage Solutions for another pitch meeting. Over a working lunch, he presented refined data and detailed projections. His phone buzzed incessantly with texts from Adam, tugging at his focus, but Leon stayed on course. If he secured this contract, it would be a career-defining moment. Yet a nagging voice reminded him that Adam and Lily's situation couldn't be ignored. By the time Leon left the meeting, he felt a cautious optimism. The executive seemed pleased, promising a final decision soon. He had barely stepped onto the sidewalk when Adam called again, his voice heavy. "Leon, I need to show you something." They met at a quiet coffee shop where Adam slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were letters, typed, unsigned, and chilling. Each one demanded payments in exchange for protection, threatening to reveal unspecified mistakes if the money wasn't delivered. "These were in Lily's dad's study," Adam said, his voice low. "The amounts match some of the suspicious transactions you found." Leon's stomach turned. This wasn't just a case of embezzlement. "This is blackmail," he muttered, scanning the threatening tone of the notes. Adam nodded, his face taut with worry. "Lily can't handle this right now, not with everything going on. I don't know where to turn." Leon rubbed his temples, his mind racing. "You've got a lawyer, right?" "Yeah, but he mostly handles estate issues," Adam admitted. "I don't think he's equipped for something like this." "Let me keep digging," Leon offered. "I'll focus on the details in these letters, addresses, names, anything we can use." That night, Leon found himself hunched over his laptop again, restless and wired. Every address and name in the letters led him down a rabbit hole. Some were dead ends, others hinted at connections to local businesses, but none provided clear answers. Leon couldn't shake the sense that they were unraveling something much larger and far more dangerous than a simple financial oversight. As the hours stretched on, he realized this was no ordinary favor. It was quickly becoming a fight for Lily's family's legacy, and perhaps even their safety. Leon scoured online databases late into the night, but none of the addresses from the documents yielded clear answers. He couldn't shake the feeling that Lily's father might have unwittingly been involved in something shady, or perhaps he was simply a victim of someone else's scheme. Leon's eyes burned from staring at the screen, his mind a whirlwind of possibilities. The week that followed was a blur of data analysis, tense calls with Adam to check on Lily's health, and hopeful updates from the prospective client about his pitch. Despite the stress, a new determination began to settle in Leon. He had always been a man who kept to himself, but stepping outside his comfort zone for the Rileys felt like the right thing to do. One afternoon, while wrestling with the mountain of documents, Leon spotted a pattern. The blackmail letters mentioned a shipping route from East Asia, and several suspicious transactions aligned with that same route. Repeated references to a local warehouse appeared throughout the records. A quick search of the city's business registry linked the facility to a man named Curtis Harlow. Leon had never heard of him, but a scrawled note in one of the ledgers caught his attention. Need to talk to Curtis about insurance. The note was dated just a month before Lily's father had passed. Leon's pulse quickened. Was Curtis the blackmailer, or just another piece of this tangled puzzle? He called Adam immediately. "Adam, I think I've found something," Leon said, explaining the connection. Adam listened carefully, then responded, "Lily's on bed rest for a few days, so I can slip away. Let's check it out." That evening, they drove to the warehouse on the outskirts of town. The building stood at the edge of an industrial district, its corrugated metal walls weathered and ominous. A large sign read, "Harlow Logistics." Adam parked a short distance away, and they approached the locked gate. The streetlights cast eerie shadows, and the hum of traffic on the nearby highway was the only sound. Peering through the fence, Leon could see stacks of shipping containers and equipment scattered around the yard. "This feels off," Adam muttered, rattling the gate. It was firmly locked. As they debated what to do, a shuffle behind the gate caught their attention. A man in his mid-50s, wearing a heavy jacket, stepped into view. His eyes narrowed as he studied them. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice gruff. Adam stepped forward. "My name's Adam Riley. My wife's father, Mark Caldwell, used to do business with Curtis Harlow. We're trying to tie up some loose ends." The man's expression shifted slightly, his suspicion softening just enough. "You're with the old man's family?" he asked, his eyes flicking to Leon with a wary glance. "Got any proof?" Adam and Leon exchanged uncertain looks. They had nothing tangible to show beyond the documents and suspicions. Adam stammered an explanation about financial irregularities and needing clarity. The man sighed and stepped closer to the gate. "I'm just the foreman here," he muttered. "Curtis ain't around. If you've got questions, you'll need to set up a meeting." Adam pressed on. "We found some concerning payments connected to this facility. Are you aware of anything unusual?" The foreman's frown deepened. "I don't talk business with strangers, but I'll tell you this. Mark Caldwell did have an arrangement with Curtis. He'd send shipments through here, but I don't know the details." The man glanced at Leon again, his tone sharp. "If you think something illegal's going on, get a warrant. Otherwise, talk to Curtis." Leon studied the man's body language. It wasn't openly hostile, but there was a guarded edge to his demeanor. Something wasn't adding up. "When will Curtis be back?" Leon asked. The foreman rubbed the back of his neck. "A couple of days, maybe. You want answers, bring some official paperwork or set up a proper meeting." With that, he stepped back and locked the gate. As they walked back to the car, Adam muttered, "Well, that was a bust." Leon shook his head, determination hardening his resolve. "We'll find another way. Curtis might be involved, or maybe he's a victim too." They drove back in silence, each lost in thought. Leon considered whether they should involve the police, but the evidence they had was far from solid. More importantly, Lily didn't need additional stress while on bed rest. Leon also worried about how diving deeper into this investigation might jeopardize his career. The contract he was close to securing hung in the balance, and any misstep could unravel everything. Back at his hotel, Leon struggled to sleep. His mind replayed every detail of the day: the suspicious foreman, the cryptic documents, and growing web of mystery surrounding the warehouse. Eventually, he drifted into a restless slumber, only to be jolted awake at dawn by another call from Adam. "Leon," Adam said, his voice tight with panic. "Something's not right. Our attorney just tried to pull some records, but the county office says certain files are sealed. And someone left a note in our mailbox last night. It said, 'Stop digging, or else.'" Leon felt his stomach drop as Adam's panicked voice relayed the situation. "I tried to track down some paperwork through the county office, but they said certain files are sealed, and then someone left a note in our mailbox last night. It said, 'Stop digging, or else.'" Lily's freaking out. The threat hit Leon like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about financial mismanagement anymore. It was personal, and it was escalating. "I'm so sorry this is happening," Leon said, struggling to find the right words. "Do you want me to come over? Maybe I can help calm Lily." Adam sounded relieved. "Would you? It'd mean a lot." Leon quickly dressed and grabbed a cab to Adam and Lily's neighborhood. The streets were lined with trees, their branches swaying in the early morning breeze. Adam's house was modest but welcoming, with a small porch framed by potted plants. Lily greeted Leon at the door, looking worn but resolute. She handed him the note. The words were typed in block letters, cold and ominous. "Stop asking questions or you'll regret it." Leon's first instinct was to tell them to call the police. "This is serious," he said, but Lily sighed and sank into an armchair. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But what can the police do with so little evidence?" Adam paced the living room, tension radiating from him. "We can't let this scare us into stopping. We have to figure out who's behind this, whether it's Curtis Harlow or someone else." Leon forced himself to stay calm. "I'll keep looking into it, but we need to be cautious. No more unplanned visits to the warehouse. Let's focus on gathering solid proof first." Lily nodded, her hand resting protectively on her belly. The baby's movements had been more frequent lately, a reassuring sign of health, but also a reminder that time was running out. Leon promised to be discreet, balancing this new responsibility with his professional obligations. Over the next few days, Leon threw himself into finalizing data for his big contract. The call finally came. His firm had been chosen. The project was his. His boss called to congratulate him, thrilled with his work. For Leon, it was a moment of validation, a reward for years of late nights and self-doubt. Yet the excitement was dampened by the unresolved crisis hanging over the Rileys. Without hesitation, Leon informed his boss that he needed a bit more time in the city for personal matters. His boss, impressed with Leon's performance, encouraged him to take as much time as he needed. That evening, Adam invited Leon over for dinner. Though Lily tried to mask her worry, Leon could see the strain in her face. As they picked at their food, the conversation returned to the documents. "There's something odd about the blackmail," Leon began. "It feels like the person responsible has an inside connection, someone who had direct access to the finances." Lily frowned, her brow furrowing in thought. "My father did have a business partner once, Ronald Fletcher. They had a falling out years ago, and he left the company abruptly." Adam nodded. "I remember your dad mentioning him, but do you really think he'd come back now, after all this time?" Leon shrugged. "If he had a grudge or if something went sour, it's possible." They decided to track Ronald down. Late that night, Leon found a listing that matched Ronald's age and location. The next morning, he and Adam drove across town to a rundown apartment complex in a less affluent area. The building was old, its paint peeling and windows smudged with grime. They knocked on a door marked with a tarnished number. An older man answered, his thinning hair and sharp eyes betraying both weariness and suspicion. When Adam mentioned Lily's father, the man exhaled a slow, heavy breath. "He's gone," Ronald said wistfully, stepping aside to let them in. The apartment was cramped and sparsely furnished, its walls lined with faded photographs and cluttered shelves. Ronald settled into a fraying armchair and motioned for them to sit on the couch. "What's this about?" Ronald asked, his voice tinged with both curiosity and caution. Adam cleared his throat. "We found evidence that someone's been blackmailing Lily. Her father's finances are a mess, and we're trying to figure out who's behind it. We thought you might know something." Ronald's expression darkened. "I left the business because I couldn't stomach the deals your father was making," he admitted. "I wanted everything above board, but he started trusting Curtis Harlow. I told him Curtis was trouble, but he wouldn't listen." Ronald paused, rubbing his temple. "We were friends once, but I had to walk away when I saw what Curtis was planning." Leon leaned forward, his pulse quickening. "What do you know about Curtis's plans?" Ronald's gaze drifted to the window, now streaked with rain. "He's involved in smuggling, precious stones, maybe more. Your father thought Curtis was just a shrewd businessman, but I saw the pattern. Curtis convinced him it was all legitimate, just profitable shortcuts." Ronald shook his head, his voice heavy with regret. "I told him to cut ties, but he trusted Curtis too much." Adam pressed, "Do you think my father-in-law knew about the blackmail?" Ronald shrugged, looking pained. "I don't know. But I do know he called me a month before he died. He sounded panicked, said he needed to secure everything. I told him it was too late. Now you're here telling me about blackmail? I'm not surprised." Leon felt a chill. Curtis Harlow wasn't just a partner, he was the key to unraveling this mess. But how deep did his operations go? And how far would he go to protect them? Ronald's words lingered in Leon's mind, heavy with implication. "Your father-in-law called me out of the blue a month before he died," Ronald had said. "He sounded panicked, said he needed to secure everything. I told him it was too late. Now you're here telling me about blackmail? I'm not surprised. Curtis Harlow thrives on intimidation. He probably doesn't want Lily digging into the finances. Maybe it implicates him, or maybe he's just trying to keep his empire intact." Leon felt a swell of anxiety. Was Curtis capable of violence? Ronald's grim portrayal suggested so. They asked Ronald if he'd help them gather evidence. The older man hesitated, visibly torn. "I'm old," he admitted, "and this was all so long ago. But if it'll help Lily, I'll try. We parted on bad terms, but I don't want her to suffer." After exchanging contact information, Leon and Adam left the apartment in silence, a sense of dread consuming them. The situation was far bigger than they had imagined. If Curtis Harlow was running an illegal smuggling operation, the blackmail letter was just the surface of a much darker iceberg. When they reported Ronald's revelations to Lily, she turned pale. Her gaze fell on a framed photo of her father on the mantel. "How could he get involved in something like that?" she whispered. "He was a good man." Leon spoke gently. "He might not have known the full extent. Curtis could have lied to him, or your dad trusted him too much. Either way, we need to be careful." Lily nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "This is so overwhelming," she murmured. They decided to consult Lily's attorney, a steady, pragmatic man named Peter Hollis. Peter listened carefully, his expression tightening at the mention of Curtis Harlow. "If he's involved," Peter said, "you'll want to tread lightly. I suggest we hire a private investigator. It'll help us build a more solid case before bringing in the authorities." Leon volunteered to coordinate with the investigator, sharing the documents he'd compiled and Ronald's contact information. Lily thanked him profusely, her gratitude evident. "Sometimes," she said softly, "we just need someone to care enough to help." Weeks passed in a tense blur. Lily's due date crept closer, and Adam hovered anxiously around her, ready to leap at the first sign of trouble. A couple of times, a vehicle lingered near their home for too long, and Adam sprang into action, only to find it belonged to a neighbor's friend. The atmosphere of paranoia weighed heavily on all of them. Leon balanced his calls with the private investigator while managing updates on his new project. Despite the growing pressure to deliver results for his firm, he felt a renewed sense of purpose in helping the Rileys. Yet, the mystery surrounding Curtis Harlow tied knots in his stomach. Leon couldn't shake the feeling that Curtis would escalate his threats if he felt cornered. Eventually, the private investigator uncovered something significant. Curtis had a known associate, a man named Byron Tate, with a criminal record involving intimidation and fraud. The signature on the blackmail letters matched Byron's handwriting. Peter Hollis decided it was time to approach the authorities. Leon braced himself for skepticism. But the detective they spoke with was surprisingly attentive. They handed over the financial documents, blackmail letters, and the investigator's findings. The detective promised to investigate thoroughly and advised them to remain vigilant but avoid rash actions. Though they were relieved to have the authorities involved, they still felt like they were walking a tightrope. Not long after, Leon's phone buzzed in the middle of the night. It was Adam, his voice frantic. "We're on our way to the hospital. Lily's water broke early." Leon's heart raced as he hurried to the hospital. He found Adam pacing the waiting room, his face pale with worry. Lily was in the delivery room, surrounded by nurses. Leon sat beside Adam, the tension between them nearly suffocating. Hours passed in a blur until a nurse finally emerged, smiling. "You can see her now. Both mom and baby are doing fine." Relief swept over them as they entered the room. Lily cradled a tiny bundle, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. The baby's eyes fluttered open briefly before closing again. Adam leaned down to kiss Lily's forehead, whispering how proud he was of her. Leon lingered by the doorway, unsure if he should intrude on their family moment. But Lily beckoned him closer. "Thank you," she said softly. "If you hadn't given up your seat on that flight, I don't know how things would have turned out." Leon smiled, feeling a quiet pride in the role he'd played. While the Rileys basked in their precious moment, Leon couldn't help but remember that the shadow of Curtis Harlow still loomed outside the hospital walls. For now, though, he let that worry drift away, choosing to focus on the joy of new life. Over the next few days, as Lily recovered, Leon visited frequently, bringing her favorite tea and offering support. They avoided discussing the investigation in front of the baby, but once Lily and the infant were safely home, Adam confided in Leon. "The detective gave us a heads up," Adam said. "They're investigating Curtis's warehouse. Search warrants are in motion. With luck, we'll have answers soon." Though it wasn't over yet, Leon felt a cautious sense of relief. For now, the Rileys were safe, and the wheels of justice had begun to turn. The investigation into Curtis Harlow's operations reached a pivotal moment. Search warrants were issued for his warehouse, and the Rileys hoped it would yield enough evidence to press charges. Leon felt cautiously optimistic but remained wary of potential setbacks. That optimism was shattered when his phone rang late one evening. Ronald's trembling voice spilled through the line. "I got a call from someone claiming to represent Curtis," Ronald said, fear evident. "They said if I keep talking, they'll come after me." "Leon, I don't know what to do. I'm terrified." Leon took a deep breath, forcing calm into his voice. "Stay calm, Ronald. Let me contact the detective right away. Don't answer any unknown calls, and if you feel unsafe, call the police immediately." He hung up and dialed the detective handling the case. The detective advised Ronald to file a formal complaint and assured Leon they were taking the threats seriously. Leon relayed the message to Ronald, but couldn't shake the sense of dread. The stakes had risen, and the fear that Curtis or his associates might resort to violence loomed heavily. That night, Leon paced his hotel room, torn between staying or returning home. He felt an obligation to see this through. Leaving now would feel like abandoning Adam and Lily when they needed him most. Determined, he stayed. A week passed without further threats, though the tension remained palpable. The detective assured them that progress was being made. Meanwhile, Lily focused on caring for her newborn, and Adam remained a vigilant presence by her side. Leon checked in daily, providing moral support and updates on his own progress. Finally, the breakthrough came. Police raided Curtis Harlow's warehouse and uncovered smuggled goods, falsified shipping records, and a cache of incriminating documents. The following day, Curtis and 2 associates were arrested. The blackmail letters matched files found on their computers, revealing a coordinated effort to extort Mark Caldwell into enabling illegal shipments. When Mark threatened to pull out, Curtis resorted to blackmail to keep him compliant. Even after Mark's passing, Curtis had continued his scare tactics to prevent Lily from uncovering his operation. The relief was immense. Lily and Adam finally saw a light at the end of the tunnel. The detective assured them that any lingering financial issues would be easier to resolve now that Curtis's scheme was exposed. Ronald, too, felt a weight lifted, relieved that the threats might finally stop. Leon experienced a mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. The immediate danger was over, though the legal process would take time to fully unfold. To celebrate, Adam and Lily invited Leon over for a quiet dinner. Lily cradled the baby, who slept soundly in her arms, as they toasted with sparkling cider. Adam raised his glass, his voice filled with gratitude. "To Leon," he said, "for his kindness, perseverance, and for standing by us even when it wasn't his battle." Leon felt heat rise to his cheeks. "I just did what anyone should do," he replied softly. They clinked glasses, and for a moment the room was filled with warmth and quiet joy. The baby stirred, letting out a soft cry, and Lily began to hum a lullaby as she gently rocked her. Leon watched them, reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had begun with one simple act of kindness. A few days later, Leon packed his bags, preparing to return home. His professional goals had been met. He'd secured the contract he'd worked so hard for, and he'd done more than he ever expected for the Rileys. Lily was in good spirits, the baby thriving, and Adam was focused on settling the estate without fear of further blackmail. As Leon said his goodbyes, Lily hugged him tightly. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You'll always be welcome in our home." Leon smiled, pausing to hold the baby's tiny hand for a moment. Adam clapped him on the back. "Safe travels, my friend. Keep in touch." Leon nodded, promising he would. At the airport, Leon's thoughts swirled. It felt surreal to think how everything had started with him offering his seat to a pregnant woman on a flight. As he boarded his plane, he glanced at his first-class ticket, a reward from his boss for landing the big contract. He scanned the crowd, wondering if someone else might need the seat more than he did, but no one appeared to be in distress. For the first time in weeks, Leon settled into his seat with a quiet sense of accomplishment. As the plane soared into the clouds, Leon reflected on the unexpected twists of the past few weeks. He thought of Lily's courage, Adam's unwavering loyalty, and Ronald's bittersweet regrets. He also considered the lesson he'd learned. The smallest acts of kindness can open doors to challenges and rewards beyond anything you could anticipate. Pulling out the battered novel he'd been reading, Leon found his place and smiled. The words felt different now, richer with meaning. Life's chapters didn't always unfold as expected, but that only made the story worth reading. This was one chapter Leon would never forget. As the flight attendant offered Leon a glass of orange juice, he smiled, the memory of that fateful day on the plane washing over him. He had asked for the same drink before everything changed. Settling back into his seat, Leon allowed himself to savor the moment of peace. The steady hum of the plane's engines felt like a soothing lullaby, signaling closure and new beginnings. Back in his hometown, Leon returned to work. His boss was thrilled with his performance, showering him with praise for securing the contract. Word spread quickly about Leon's diligence and ability to impress clients. Yet something within Leon had shifted. He began to notice moments where help might be needed, small opportunities to make a difference. It wasn't about being a hero. He had learned that a little compassion could ripple outward, creating unexpected impact. Leon kept in touch with Adam and Lily through texts and occasional phone calls. They sent him photos of their daughter, wide-eyed and curious, growing a little each day. Lily's voice sounded lighter in their calls, free from the weight of fear and uncertainty that had once burdened her. Months later, the trial against Curtis Harlow began. Lily testified about what her father had shared, while Ronald provided detailed accounts of the business history. Leon wasn't called to the stand but attended the trial quietly, ready to offer his support. Curtis glared at them all from across the courtroom, but the evidence was overwhelming. In the end, Curtis was convicted on multiple counts, ensuring he would no longer be a threat. When Lily called Leon to share the news, her voice was a mix of joy and relief. "It's finally over," she said. "We can truly move on." Leon congratulated her, listening as her daughter babbled in the background. "I'm glad," he told her. "You all deserve peace." "You deserve thanks," she replied. "Not just for the seat on the plane, but for everything else you did. You believed in us when things felt hopeless, and I'll never forget it." Leon swallowed hard, humbled. "I only did what felt right," he said softly. After the call, Leon leaned back in his chair, letting the moment sink in. Sometimes, people crossed your path in ways you couldn't predict. That single gesture, the decision to give up his seat, had been small in the grand scheme of things, but for Lily, It had been life-changing. For Leon, it had become a turning point, revealing a side of himself he hadn't realized existed. Life moved forward. Lily and Adam managed the estate, built a stable future, and watched their daughter grow. Leon thrived in his career, occasionally traveling for more high-stakes projects. With each trip, he found himself scanning the crowd, not out of suspicion, but with openness. He thought often of that exhausted pregnant woman standing in the aisle of a cramped plane. That single act of kindness had led him to struggles, friendships, and a deeper sense of purpose than he'd ever known. Years later, an unexpected envelope arrived in Leon's mailbox. Inside was a wedding invitation from Lily's sister, someone Leon had never met. The note mentioned a family gathering and included a personal message from Lily. "You're part of our extended family now. We'd love for you to join us." Leon hesitated. He was busy, as always, but the thought of reconnecting with the Rileys brought a smile to his face. Ultimately, he decided to attend. On the day of the wedding, Leon arrived at a charming old church with stained glass windows and ivy climbing its walls. Inside, he spotted Lily holding her toddler's hand. The same baby he had seen in the hospital. The little girl clutched a tiny bouquet of flowers, her wide eyes taking in the bustling crowd. Lily saw Leon and waved him over, her smile beaming. "You made it!" she exclaimed. She introduced him to her family, many of whom seemed to already know who he was. They thanked him quietly for helping Lily during her darkest moments. Leon felt shy under their gratitude, but also strangely proud. Adam patted him on the back. "We owe you so much," he said, then added with a grin, "but I know you'll say you just did what anyone would." Leon chuckled. "You know me well." They guided Leon to a seat, and the ceremony began. As Leon watched the bride walk down the aisle, a swell of emotion overcame him. He glanced at Lily and Adam, remembering everything they had endured together. Their daughter, no longer a baby, sat on Adam's lap, playing with a ribbon. The family looked content, free of the shadows that once loomed over them. After the vows were exchanged, the reception began. Music and laughter filled the air, and Leon found himself sipping punch, a pleasant warmth spreading through him. Eventually, Lily pulled him aside to talk. "I never told you this," she began, her voice quiet, "but the day you gave me your seat on the plane, I was terrified. I had just gotten bad news from my doctor about my blood pressure. Every small comfort made a difference, and if you hadn't done that, I don't know how the flight would have gone." Leon tried to wave off her gratitude, but she pressed on. "It wasn't just that. You stuck with us, even when it got dangerous. You risked your time, your peace of mind, maybe even your reputation, to help us. You reminded me that there are still good people in the world who do the right thing." Tears glimmered in her eyes, but her smile remained steady. "Your kindness changed everything for me and my family. My father's name is no longer tarnished. My daughter won't grow up under that shadow." Leon felt a lump rise in his throat. "I'm just grateful to have been a part of it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've taught me as much as I've given." They hugged, a moment of quiet understanding passing between them. Later, as the evening wound down, Leon watched the guests laugh and dance, the swirl of color and light filling the room. He reflected on the improbable journey that had brought him here, a single, simple decision leading to profound change. The next day, as Leon returned home, he carried with him a renewed sense of purpose. The ripples of his kindness had extended farther than he'd ever imagined, touching lives and leaving an indelible mark. Sometimes he realized the smallest gestures have the power to change everything. Lily's voice was steady but filled with emotion. "That day on the plane, I was terrified," she admitted to Leon. "I'd just gotten bad news from my doctor about my blood pressure. Every little comfort made a difference, and if you hadn't given up your seat, who knows how the flight would have gone." Leon tried to brush it off, shaking his head modestly. It was nothing, really. But Lily wasn't done. "It wasn't just that," she continued, tears brimming in her eyes. "You chose to stay with us, even when it got dangerous. I know you risked your own peace of mind, and maybe even your reputation to help us. You proved that there are still good people in the world who do the right thing." Her voice softened as a smile broke through her tears. "Your kindness changed everything for me and my family. My father's name isn't tarnished anymore, and my daughter can grow up without fear." Leon felt a lump rise in his throat. "I'm grateful to have been part of it," he managed to say. "You've taught me just as much about trust and perseverance." Lily hugged him tightly, her embrace warm and filled with gratitude. Adam soon joined them, taking Lily's hand, and the three of them stood in a quiet moment of acknowledgement. A bond forged through trust, struggle, and shared resilience. As the evening celebration continued, Leon found himself seated at a table, sipping a glass of sparkling cider. He watched the swirl of music, laughter, and dancing, a smile tugging at his lips. The improbable journey that had brought him to this moment played through his mind like a vivid reel. Later, as the guests began to leave and the newlyweds departed for their new life, Leon said his farewells to Lily and Adam. "Stay in touch," Adam said, clapping him on the back. "We're not letting you disappear on us." On the ride back to his hotel, Leon reflected on how small decisions, like giving up a seat on a plane, could trigger massive shifts in life's trajectory. Back in his room, he sat on the edge of the bed and let out a long sigh of contentment. Days turned into weeks, and the wedding became a cherished memory. Leon returned to work, continuing to excel in his career, but something inside him had changed. A yearning for deeper connections began to grow, and he found himself volunteering at local community centers in his free time. He didn't talk about it much. He preferred to keep it personal, but the realization that small, genuine gestures could ripple outward to create meaningful change stayed with him. Lily and Adam stayed in touch, sending pictures of their daughter as she hit milestones, first steps, first words, and endless smiles. Each photo reminded Leon of how far they'd come. Lily sounded freer in her updates, no longer weighed down by the fears of the past. Adam occasionally sent him jokes or memes, a simple yet heartfelt way of keeping their bond alive. Leon often thought back to their first encounter at the airport coffee line, how awkward it had felt, how random it all seemed. But looking back, he saw the cosmic threads that connected their lives, weaving a tapestry of trust and transformation. Whenever Leon found himself on a plane, he couldn't help but scan the rows, noticing passengers who might need a hand. He didn't always give up his seat. Sometimes there was no need, but the awareness itself made him more empathetic. One day, he noticed a young mother struggling with two toddlers, her arms filled with bags. Leon stepped forward to help with her luggage, and the palpable relief on her face reignited that spark of fulfillment. It wasn't about recognition or praise. It was about being decent, about showing humanity in small, meaningful ways. Looking ahead, Leon didn't know what challenges life would throw his way, but he felt renewed confidence in his ability to face them. The events with Lily and Adam had revealed a wellspring of resilience and compassion within him. No matter how uncertain the future might be, Leon understood one thing: the power of a single kind act remained constant. In the grand tapestry of his life, his decision to give up a first-class seat had become the thread that wove together trust, friendship, and justice. It hadn't felt extraordinary at the time, but to the woman who had needed it most, it made all the difference. Through danger and discovery, sorrow and triumph, Leon and the Rileys emerged stronger. Their story stood as a quiet reminder. Kindness, once set in motion, carries on, touching hearts and changing lives in ways no one can predict. Did this story resonate with you? Share your thoughts in the comments. What moment or character inspired you the most? If you enjoyed this tale of compassion, courage, and the unexpected connections that change our lives, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more heartwarming stories. Let's keep this journey going together.